When you think of the races that inhabit the Warhammer Fantasy universe, you don't really think of time travel or interstellar voyages, but the Skaven have sent vessels into space. They've spoken directly with the Eldar, and Ghoritch, the Castellan of Hellpit, just got back from a vacation in the grim darkness of the far future, where he stole himself some Solar Auxilia power armor and Ogren Charonite claws. Skaven would fit right at home in the 40k universe, but the threat of chaos is always rearing its ugly head, so today, in the jungles of Lustria, the Ratmen must face their demons and dragons with a big ol' rush army sprinting their way. I am commanding the furry rodents of Skaven Blight. Zach B. Sane is commanding the Warriors of Chaos, and my army has a bit of everything, but it's unquestionably focused on the monsters of Clan Moulder. Almost half my army is invested in Throt the Unclean and Ghoritch the Terminator. He's an average to bad pick in a lot of matchups, but he's pretty much tailor-made for beating down the followers of the Dark Gods, where his massive weapon strength, armor piercing, and 30 bonus versus infantry lets him grind a huge portion of their roster into pulp. And he doesn't really have to worry too much about getting shot. He will straight up poop on someone like Sigvald, who we've kind of seen rise to the top of the meta for Chaos, and even someone like Kolek has to be very wary of getting caught out of position when Throt, his Brood Horror, his Instant Rat Ogre Summon, and Ghoritch are in the mix. That situation can get pretty ugly for just about any Legendary Lord. And of course, there's tons of synergy with Creature Killer and Remouldered as well. Now, Throt's Brood Horror did receive some nerfs in the most recent patch. His mass was almost halved, so he's not such a chonky boy anymore, and his melee defense was lowered by 10, but he's still one of the best Skaven Lords. For the rest of the army, got a Plague Priest with Clan Rat and Plague Monk summons, 2 Rattling Guns, Warp Lightning Cannon, Council Guard Albinos, and 2 Wolf Rats. Call them toilet paper doggos because they help clean up the rear. And on the flip side, come the Forces of Chaos with a pretty interesting rush army. The Summoners of Rage Dragon Ogre Elite and their Chain Lightning Bound spell. They're a pretty serious threat to Moulder monsters. Forsaken on each flank will straight up buzzsaw through Skaven Chaff and even Plague Monks. Gorby's Chariots do exactly what their name implies in the center. Got the Slaneshi Mirror Guard, some Chaos Knights with Lances, and all the way on the right flank, far from the danger of those Warp Lightning Cannons, flies a Tzeentchian Sorcerer on a Chaos Dragon, the Wind of Michael Jackson at his command. Shabo! Final Transmutation, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Plague of Rust, Final Transmutation, and Searing Doom are going to be his 3 spells. So, the Chaos attack is pretty much predicated on swarming in from as many sides as possible, using that superior mobility to shut down the range play, isolate Throt and Ghoritch, and then kill them off last. Looking back on it, and this is honestly something I kind of struggle with a lot of the time I play Skaven, is that I spread the field maybe a little bit too much with them, which can leave gaps in my lines and allows some of the fast movers to get through unmolested. Now, normally that's not the worst thing to be spread wide, because it means your opponent has more ground to cover from when they first make contact with the slaves and clan rats to when they break into the juicy center to get at your ranged troops. But when they have this much maneuverability, even on their infantry, Forsaken are fast, Marauder horses are fast, Chaos Knights are relatively fast. You've got a Chaos Dragon, Chariots, you name it. It's maybe better to keep things a little bit more compact so your infantry can respond quicker when something dives in at the Rattling Guns or at the cannon. So there's a time and place to be this spread out. I might be a little bit too spread out at the moment. But the map is nice if you're a Warp Lightning Cannon crew. Good lines of sight, a big old hill to park atop, and cackle while you blast things into the realms of ruin. And the Chaos Infantry is in for a bit of a rough surprise. Sometimes feel bad for the Marauders. They've been thrown to the wolves quite literally here, and it will be a hellish end for them. Now, there is something to be said for always keeping Ghoritch and Throt together, because they have so much synergy, but this is overkill. It's not necessary to send both into the front ranks. Ghoritch should probably stay back in the center and wait for a legit commitment from Chaos, while Throt can use that 90+ speed and terror to quickly clean up any of the crap on the Ratman's windshield and then retreat back into the core of the army once Chaos starts diving in there. The Rattling Guns are unleashing their volleys right now. They're getting some good shots into the Summoners of Rage, but already the Marauder Horsemen and that mobility game from Chaos is threatening the flanks, and because of the way the army is oriented, the way it's spread out, there are definitely some gaps here that Marauder Horsemen and their speed might be able to exploit. Now, in terms of the infantry itself for the Skaven, they are not going to perform very well against Forsaken, Mirror Guard, Gorby's Chariot charges. There's a lot of stuff that will run them over and make them rout pretty much on contact. Gorby's Chariots in particular are a big old issue. The only infantry unit on the field that has any chance of stopping them are the unbreakable Council Guard Storm Vermin Albino. So, Gorebeast diving right into the center, and everything in the Skaven army is collapsing. Wolf Rats, Throt the Unclean, Ghoritch the Castellan of Hellpit, Plague Monk summons. Everything is trying to tie them down, get them off the field ASAP, but that's exposing other components of the army. And you can see that now that everything's collapsed in, the Rattling Guns on the right flank are now very much isolated, and a Marauder Horseman charge, along with the Summoners of Rage coming up the center, should be able to tie them down and perhaps even destroy them. There were some Wolf Rats that were able to block the charge of the Marauder Horseman. Nice breath attack coming down. Question for Zach B. Sane and Chaos is it worth it to send 1,400 gold worth of your troops into the center of the Skaven army to set up maybe something like a upgraded Final Transmutation? I would say yes. It's broken the Skaven battle lines down quite well. It's opened up a bunch more avenues of attack, left the Rattling Guns on an island, and even allowed that Tzeentchian Sorcerer to get a brutal overcast FT on Throt, the Plague Priest, and a large element of the Vermintide. But that move was not without sacrifice. Losing an entire Gorebeast chariot that got almost no damage value whatsoever certainly hurts. I'd say the opening stages of the battle have slightly gone the way of Chaos, and they've set themselves up well, but it's Pyrrhic, it's painful, and it allows Skaven to counterpunch. With the Terminator himself back from the future, come face me if you want to die. Those rending talons, as Indrid would say, ripping deep into the Chaos battle lines, while the twin-headed Chaos Dragon dives for the rear and starts munching on some Rattling Guns. So a lot of the range play for the Skaven is down, or at least tied up at the moment. The Albino Guard are nearby. They're moving into the Marauder Horsemen with a summon behind them. That will be incredibly painful for the Marauders. I'm not sure they'll be able to escape from that situation. Plague Priest is in a little bit of pain right now. Throt is down to half HP, and the Tzeentchian Sorcerer is looking quite healthy at the moment. Rat Ogre summons chasing after the Chaos Dragon, but they will crumble out very soon. And now the battle will shift to a focal point around the Council Guard Albino Storm Vermin. Big double Dragon Breath attack coming in, and that'll deal about 1/4 of their HP in damage, so certainly a nice cast. It can be hard to get rid of that much HP, and obviously infinite morale. They are unbreakable, so any damage you can send their way is important. Meanwhile, Ghoritch is doing exactly what Ghoritch is meant to do, which is beat up on infantry. He would love to get his hands on some Footlords if that was a thing, but he will be content beating up on the Mirror Guard and maybe laying into that Chaos Dragon if he goes for the Plague Priest once again. Another Clan Rat Vermintide summon, Searing Doom on the Warp Lightning Cannons, trying to maybe get some of those models off of the field. Ghoritch might have overextended a little bit there. He realized it, he's pulling away, and he's actually faster than Dragon Ogres. I believe Dragon Ogres are 64 speed. Ghoritch is 70, so he has a surprising amount of mobility for someone so bulky, so large, and so Terminator-esque. I mean, he's not going to be doing Gabriel Angelos Dawn of War 3 Terminator flips anytime soon, but he certainly has the speed to get away and reposition when it is required. Now, you might be wondering why the Chaos Dragon isn't beating up on Ghoritch when he has such low melee defense and you can cycle charge. Well, the thing is, the Brood Horror can close the gap real quick, and not only that, he has 2 uses of Remoldered. I'm not sure either has been popped so far. So, Ghoritch doesn't have 4,000 HP left. He has more like 6,500 HP left, which means he's got some Invocation of the Hex coming his way at some point in this battle. It's not worth it for the Chaos Dragon to put himself on the ground and expose himself to that kind of scenario where he might get surrounded by Throt and by some really powerful single entity Gooners. Another breath attack, this time on Ghoritch himself. That dealt a lot of damage, and I think Remoldered will be used in response. Meanwhile, the Clan Rats and the Slave Rats are pretty much completely gone. Yeah, Remoldered did go down +8 leadership, +24 melee attack. There won't be any benefit from those here, but the heal in and of itself is a huge deal. It means that his effective HP pool is way larger. Now, the Skaven have retreated all the way to the summit of that hill, and they are looking to protect their Rattling Guns. Now, the Chaos Dragon really wants to get them off the field, but if he lands there, he is in huge trouble, because the Brood Horror was not far behind, Ghoritch was not far behind, and now that means that he'll take some damage as he tries to escape from that situation. Rattling guns, even with only a handful of models left, can rack up a lot of damage on single entities. Meanwhile, corrosive vomit being spewed from the brood horror, melting Forsaken out on the right flank, and the mirror guard. They are immune to psych, so they will not terror route here. I believe the Forsaken would have lost their frenzy by this point, and they just are not going to perform well against this kind of iconic dual single entity threat. The infantry being torn apart. There are javelins being thrown their way, which will help against the low armor. But that final transportation is going down. It hit everything, but the Chaos Dragon dove into the middle of those two single entities, and Creature Killer is popped. That is plus 16 leadership. Chain Lightning down from the Summoners of Rage, who were not able to support because of a Vermintide summon. And my lord, that Tzeentchian Sorcerer got shoved into a locker, got his head pushed into the toilet, got a swirly, and he got bullied hard. Creature Killer, that plus 16 bonus for large in an AoE, paying huge dividends for Ghoritch and for Throt in that fight against the dragon, and it's still active. Immune to Psychology, they're going in now, they're fighting everything around them. It's just the Unbreakable Storm Vermin and the two single entities, surrounded by mostly low-tier troops at this point. There are some Chaos Knights in there. There are a couple Forsaken, but it's mostly Marauders and Marauder Horsemen. And at the moment, they're not chunking through this HP particularly well. Now, what I don't know is if Throt has another use of Remoldered at the moment. The Chaos Knights are still a huge threat. If they get a full surround off on either Ghoritch or especially Throt the Unclean, they could be in huge trouble. Ghoritch because he has very low melee defense, and Throt because he has very low armor. Full surround off from Chaos Knights is a big problem for them, but they are very low and they are wavering, and they are not immune to Psychology, so they will need to wait for the Chaos Dragon to return to the fold. More Marauders coming up over the hillside. Forsaken plunging into it. Evisceration popped. Got that stripper pole dance coming in from Ghoritch, the Castellan of Hell Pit. And Throt the Unclean getting that Psycho charging in that he's so well known for, using that 95 speed to its fullest potential. Still though, Chaos has some troops that are a threat to the remaining single entities. Remoldered was sent in for the second time on Ghoritch. You can see his HP is well above half at this point. Chaos Knights going in for the final desperate charge. Chaos Dragon probably has to do it as well, but first a Plague of Rust to lower his armor down to 40. Big Psycho Charge coming in, but the two single entities for Clan Molder are looking so strong right now, and a Chaos Sorcerer, even on a Chaos Dragon, just won't match up well against all that weapon strength. Painful, exploded, death comes the way of Chaos, and the single entities for the Skaven are too much for the ruinous powers in this one. Throt the Unclean and Ghoritch, Castellan of Hell Pit, when they are fighting back-to-back, they are a force for sure. It can be terrifying, the kind of damage they can unleash and the amount of synergy they can bring to the battlefield when they're rolling alongside each other. Really like seeing Ghoritch. I mean, he's just an amazing model, and he really has some nice applications in a handful of matchups. You don't want to be bringing him against the Empire, against factions with a lot of gunpowder typically, ones that can, High Elves for example, will just shoot him to pieces. I mean, he's a big target. He is very susceptible to focus fire from cheap archers, cheap handguns, that kind of thing. But if he can get on top of a Footlord or high-value infantry with a lot of armor, I mean, he had 2,300 damage value there, and it's actually surprising what he can just do in normal duels as well. I mean, yes, he has low melee defense, but you have Remoldered to buff him up, to give him a lot of HP if he's getting kind of swarmed, and he just has so much weapon strength and so many buffs that he can easily get over 100 melee attack, even with Creature Killer, that plus 16 bonus versus large. That can make him a threat to large targets too. And yeah, he will just dumpster a lot of other characters given the right situation. Now, the Chaos Knights and the Summoners of Rage were undoubtedly an issue that game. The Forsaken were fantastic for buzzsawing their way through the Clan Rats and the Slave Rats. They dove in, they shut down the Rattling Guns pretty well, the Warp Lightning Cannons pretty well, although I got some damage value out of the Warp Lightning Cannons for sure. Got some good shots into the Gorby's Chariots and the Chaos Knights and even the Dragon Ogres. 4,200 damage value on the Chaos Sorcerers. Incredibly impressive. A lot of that, of course, from the Final Transmutations, but also from the Breath attacks as well. Got one really good one on Ghoritch, got one really good one on the Council Guard Storm Vermin. The Chaos Dragon play was very good, But I think maybe a little bit more patience in that final engagement, or that close to final engagement, when he initially took all that damage. I think if he had maybe stayed in the air a little bit longer, let the final transmutation do its work, and then attack one of these single entities when their rear was exposed, and when he had a little bit more support from the Dragon Ogres, probably has a good chance to win that game. So the issue he had there was he dove in to kill Ghoritch and just take him off the field completely, but the Summoners of Rage were stuck behind the Vermintide summon. Just a little bit more patience there, allows Dragon Ogres to come around, get that full surround off, let the Chaos Dragon come in from behind, and then I think if either one of those single entities routes that close to the white line, I think Chaos probably takes that game. But most of the Skaven army was invested in Throt and Ghoritch, so it's no surprise they were the last two standing and that they had a chance to win it at the end.